I thought you started the episode.
Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I can hear you. Ding that bell, though. No, it's very quiet, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of far away.
Yeah, that's fine. I just saw your bell for the first time. Like, mine's like one of these guys. Like, this is a big boy. Was this the start of our episode?
Bell reveal?
Bell
We
reveal?
don't have to do face reveals on this podcast, but we'll do a bell reveal.
If you're one of the 4 people who listen to this podcast, you've heard the bell before. We like our title ideas.
Is this the show?
Guess this is the show, huh?
This is the show. What's in the show is in the show. Hello, everybody. You don't
you're
know
gonna
this,
hate
but
me,
it's
but
been...
You're noticeably quieter.
It's been a... Huh?
You're definitely quiet, man.
But I'm not in OBS. So...
Okay, maybe just Zoom.
I mean, I guess we could just be like, hey, guess what? Brian got a new microphone. Welcome to the one about Godzilla movies. Brian got a new microphone. He's really excited about it. Say something, Brian.
It's true. Hey, dulcet tones, voices, voice acting.
Very demure. Very
synergy. Synergy.
Darlene,
the one about
check.
Godzilla movies.
Check
dot
1,
JPEG.
2. Darlene, check.
Check.
Cash.
Check 1, 2.
Cash, check, or credit.
Cash me outside.
So,
we should
you
really
been up
start
to?
this thing.
You went to like Alaska or something?
Bro, I am repping the Alaska hat, huh?
Oh, I didn't even notice that. I would legit used my mind and my brain to remember that you were on a cruise to Alaska. How was Alaska?
Wow. It's good to know those things still work. Yeah, dude. Yeah. My family went on a trip to Alaska. It was a cruise. It was like 8 of us. My brother and my sister are married, my parents, and then me and my brother were the 4th couple. He lives here in my house too, so no, it's actually really funny. Like my mom has like wedding photos on her wall, and she has like my brother and his wife and my sister and her husband, and then me and my brother at my brother's wedding are the 3rd couple on the wall, just like side hugging it out. Yep. We know who we are. So, but yeah, went to Alaska, came back with a new microphone. That's not true, but
shout out to the Yeti.
Technically, I already had this microphone. It was like in a box,
In a bag?
and like
In a box?
the reason is it embarrassing to admit that you listened to an episode of your own podcast just because you were in the car and you were bored? Anyways, that's what I did the other day. And I was like, man, like...
From what I hear, it's like 50-50. People do listen to their own stuff and people do not listen to their own.
Really?
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't listening it because I wanted to hear my voice. It was just like, I don't remember what we talked about. I guess I'll listen to it. But anyways, I was listening to it. I was like, man, Caleb's voice sounds so great. That nice microphone. And mine just sounds like he called me in on, FaceTime or something. Because it sounded like AirPods. And I was like, man, I have a microphone. I just need to actually get a good mic stand situation. And turns out there's a lot of them on Amazon. So here we are.
Thank you to the Washington Delivery Company. Thank you to Blue Microphones for the Yeti. And thank you to me for bullying Brian into spending the $20 on a USB cable and a microphone stand.
It was a little more than that, but...
If you would like to help cover the cost, help Brian recuperate because he may never recover financially from this, go ahead and hit patreon.com/the one about Godzilla movies. $5 a month. We just need 30 of you, and I think we'll be covered.
You got it.
So we're discussing the movie King Kong versus Godzilla. And this is not Godzilla versus King Kong, which is a movie we've already discussed.
From what, 29 to 27? 2019? No, 2021.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
That's what you're talking about, right?
Yep. From 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. This is 1963, King Kong versus Godzilla, the original, where they got the idea. And
it's funny. It's funny you say that because I have the IMDb for the movie up right now, and like the video player thing on the profile is playing cast interviews from the 2021 movie.
I just saw that a second ago too because I also have that webpage open.
Yeah.
Hi, IMDb, sponsor us. Anyways, yeah. I don't know. That's my new thing now. I guess I'm blowing kisses to people.
It was more the sponsorship concept of IMDb that I was making a face at. But
oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they do that. I don't think
Why
they
would
actually
do
make
that?
money, really.
Why does anybody do anything? Why am I not a potted plant? Like,
if you're like me and you like Wikipedia rabbit trails, you should look up the history of IMDb. Anyways, we're talking about King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
1963.
Dude, it's this movie's so fun. I'm gonna do a little
I enjoyed it actually.
TLDR, which this is just for Brian. So everybody else, hang on just 1 second. Brian, TLDR, too long didn't read, and not too didn't long read. Okay.
Yep. I
TL
been having some issues with that recently.
TL
Caught myself. TLDR.
DR. TL.
Yeah. TL.
DR.
DR.
TLDR.
Told her.
The emphasis on the wrong syllable. So I'm going to do a tilde for King Kong versus Godzilla. This is a Showa era movie. We are entering into this is the meat of what is considered the Showa era of our Godzilla movies. Started with the first movie and goes until 1975. So this is the first of the next 10 years of like this movie. Before I've even done anything, this movie sets the tone for the next 10 years of Godzilla movies, which is pretty crazy. Anyways, Showa era, King Kong versus Godzilla. The advertising director, I feel like that girl on TikTok, Franny, who has like dyslexia. Have you ever seen her videos? We'll put a link to it to Franny TikTok. She's
no,
like
but
from
you
Scandinavia or
should do
Netherlands or something, and is infinitely hilarious. The advertising director of Pacific Pharmaceuticals, frustrated with the low ratings of his nerdy sponsored TV program, seeks a more sensationalist approach after being chewed out by the president of Japan. He orders his staff to Faroe Island to capture King Kong for exploitation. Meanwhile, Godzilla reemerges, a media frenzy generates, and it ends up with Pacific Pharmaceuticals looking to capitalize off of this this ultimate kaiju showdown.
Sounds about right.
So yeah, 1963. It's in color. It's
yeah, really is.
Yeah, it's the most colossal conflict the screen has ever known. So why don't you,
according to the poster,
start off with give us your thoughts, Brian.
That just made me think of, I guess it's technically a trivia item, but I'd heard they sort of like the way they marketed this was almost like a WWE match. Yeah,
that's in my notes for later. I have it written down. Everything is wrestling.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed this movie so much. Yeah, like wasn't like the best movie I've ever seen. It wasn't even the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. It was just like it was a step in the right direction. I thought it was like pretty well rounded, solid overall. Because of a number of things, I actually like when I got to the end of the movie, like I was waiting patiently to finish the film and watching it, because I was actually like really excited to check out the trivia. This is just one where I like was wondering a lot of things about the production of the movie, or I don't know. I was just interested to get to the trivia, so we will do that at the end of the episode. Stick around, you'll find out. Yeah. I have like a bunch of notes on this one. Should get into it?
Yeah, dude, let's do it. It makes me happy. It makes me happy to hear that you enjoyed it. Like that was like basically the first thing out of your mouth. That is not usually the first thing out of your mouth about these movies. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. I mean, I knew you were gonna have your thing.
Some of it's relative too, you know. I mean, Didn't love Rodan. Mothra was interesting. You love Mothra more than me. We know this.
Yeah, I love Mothra.
So, I think there are a couple things that made me like it. Let's just go down the list. Sure. Interesting point. Toho 30th anniversary. This film, apparently. I always pay attention to like the first couple of like titles and these because it says things about the era and things to know. So there was like this little logo or something that was talking about Toho 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
Which I guess would mean that Toho was around since the 30s. So I haven't looked at what films they were making back then, but
it's a lot of like samurai movies.
They really hit their stride in the 50s. So, yeah. I mean, Seven Samurai came out the same year as the original Godzilla, 1954. Yeah. And that movie has been talked about.
It's still talked
forever. About. Like, everything has an homage to it. It's like a huge film. So, yeah, we're like a good, 10 years into them being well known. And so, anyways, Toho scope logo again. I think I mentioned that for Mothra. It's Toho's Cinema Scope. It's a anamorphic widescreen format. It's fun to have that widescreen. It's fun to have color. There was like some real color in this one. Yeah, Godzilla in color is just like a whole different thing than like the first couple of black and white. So,
do you think it like loses some of the like the heaviness or the like horror feel or the like that kind of because of the color or?
Not necessarily. It's just a different dimension, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like more choices you have to make visually, how to represent things. For instance, Kong in this film was kind of like reddish brown looking, as opposed to like traditional black. And that's just something like they arrived on. But like you wouldn't see that visual choice in black and white. Pausing.
You won't hear that in the recording. That's fine.
I mean, I can just start talking if you're gonna have my head up, or if you want to just thumbs me up.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also, I'll say this was a Criterion Collection restoration of some sort. This version of the film that I was watching. So, yeah, this film is in the Criterion Collection. That does mean they did some restorative work. Notice throughout the film, I think actually we were like kind of texting about it, but yeah, there's like some quality that kind of goes in and out throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of tell that they had a couple of maybe some different reels when they were like restoring it, and maybe the good quality one they had some gaps, so they had to kind of fill that in with a lower quality. So it kind of hops in and out. There's actually one point where there's almost like a little skip or a frame jump on a submarine that I noticed.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
I noticed the quality kind of dipping in and out. I really only noticed kind of one like visual like movement jump, but overall looks pretty good. The reel they got their hands on to like restore and stuff. You know, grainy as heck, but it's pretty clean. So
right, yeah, I thought it like it looks like an old movie, but it doesn't look terrible. Like I didn't think any of the film grain was distracting or any of that. Just as it is just part of it, you know. So
sure,
yeah,
I like film grain, anyways.
Right, yeah, I do too.
Feels real to me. That's why it's added to everything to make things seem more real. You have to add film grain to digital stuff to make it feel more real. It's just funny how that works.
Yeah,
it's so ingrained in us. So, man, list of things I liked. I wrote down man who flips a coin for everything. Man, that pharmaceutical guy was like Two-Face in there, you know, just flipping a coin for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if he ever like addressed it. They just kept showing him doing it, and then he would like say something, and it seemed as if maybe the thing he was saying was a result of his coin flip. Yeah.
Yeah, this guy reminded me of the dude from Mothra that like
Mm.
stole the two girls, but like
Mm.
turned up. You know what I mean? Just like turn the character up, turn the goofiness up, turn the like greedy up, everything about it, and be less creepy weirdo Bond villain.
Mm.
Turn that down. Is kind of what he felt like to me. Just like a bigger, kind of more, yeah, I don't know, just like a goofier, I guess, version, a campier version of the dude from Mothra.
Hmm. Okay, so in this movie, there's a scene where there's a guy who's talking about he invented this really strong thread. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember if that has any relevance to the plot at any point. I just remember I must have like missed it.
It's a they end up transporting Kong with it the second time. They
Is
tied
that
the
what they were
balloons
using?
to him in the helicopters, and they used that string that he invented.
Well, he's talking about it, and he just goes to demos it. He just goes and he's like hanging off his balcony. Um,
Dude's
dude,
like, "Ah, what?"
and he's like so confident. He's like, "Hey, I invented this really strong synthetic like spider string," and he's just like leaning off his balcony. That's someone who's testing his own work. Respect, you know.
That's me
That's how
every
you
time I hang
demonstrate
a.
confidence in his product.
That's me every time I hang a speaker off the ceiling. I just like cling onto it. Or like a
That's fun.
TV. We were hanging TVs a whole bunch the summer of this work. There was a school district that got all a bunch of like signage TVs. We'd put the mount up on the wall before we'd hang the TV, and I would just like hang myself
Do a
off of
pull up.
it. I was like, I ain't going nowhere. Let's go.
Oh, that's great. So we have an island called Faro. I don't know how it's said.
Pharaoh.
Yeah, it's where King Kong is. We don't meet him at first. There's an exposition to the island. Yeah, the Pharaoh sets, and some like giant like matte paintings in the background. Were just like really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Looked great. Honestly, I'm a big fan of King Kong franchise. Like historically, like the original 33 is a pretty significant film. Yeah, I thought there was a really nice homage here to the original Skull Island from 1933. They definitely like did a good work and sort of like recognizing that vibe. Did involve a lot of brown face, but
Where is
we're
that?
just still on that era, you know. That's just how they did things.
Toho apparently didn't do enough blackface in Mothra and had to come back for round 2.
Sure did.
So if you had that in your
But yeah,
bingo, go ahead and cross that off.
blackface. Yeah. So yeah, it was like this funny little scene with like I didn't actually write this down, but these the natives weren't letting them on the island. It's just like these two guys, an interpreter, and of course their move is like give them the Western toys or Eastern toys, I guess, depending how you look at it. Like giving them a radio, cigarettes, give them cigarettes. I was like, oh my god, we're watching the colonialization of a native colony. This is the plot. But it worked. They were big fan of the cigarettes and let them stay. So
Yeah, I mean, they let that like 12-year-old kid have one. It was great.
yeah, literally just passing them out like candy. Different times, you know. Yeah, I wrote down. We have some like tanks firing at Godzilla, I believe. When they discover Godzilla, Godzilla emerges. Well, they had some tank scenes. They had some really nice miniature sets and some tanks. I thought it looked great. I thought it's like some of the best miniature work I've seen so far in the franchise, chronologically, that is. Some really, really great miniature work in this film. I was like really impressed. To the extent that I even like, actually I saw some comments and some other reviews from other people of, there's some things that they built miniature sets where you're like, was that easier than just like going and shooting the real thing? Like, this is like further down my list, but there's a scene with like a construction site, and it's like all tiny.
Yeah.
And it's like you could have just went and filmed the construction site.
Like you don't have anywhere doing any building right now?
There wasn't like a monster walking through the scene. Like why did you do that? What? But it looked great, and like it actually like took me out of the movie, like how good it looked. I was like, that's impressive.
Congratulations.
Like a bunch of like radio controlled like tractory things.
Yeah.
And it's an art form that's kind of lost these days, you know. You just gotta appreciate it. So yeah, back to Godzilla. There's an offhand comment about a Godzilla movie. Like I think they're talking about the famousness of Godzilla. It might be discussion about the headlines. There's a bunch of headlines about Godzilla. Someone makes a comment about, you know, a film made about Godzilla or something, like in world, and I was like, wow, that's meta.
Really?
Yeah, and I can't remember the exact moment.
I missed that.
Well, now you've version watch again. Ha. How many times have you seen this movie?
Ooh, I mean, this is the first time I watched it today. Well, some yesterday and some today. This is the first time since I was a kid. I think, but I definitely saw it like I think 5 or 6 times in a row when I was little, or not little, but like I don't know, whatever I said, I was like 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. Yeah, but I haven't seen it in a long, long time. So 6 or 7, probably.
Okay. Dude, there's a scene with the octopus, dude.
Yeah, that octopus scene is so cool.
It is legitimately amazing. Like, it just starts right off, and I was like, "Oh, this is real, man." No animatronics here.
Well, yeah, no animatronics, but it's stop motion. That is one of 2 stop motion events in the movie. There's some stop motion in that.
There is some minimal stop motion in that scene, yes.
And it was intentional. I have that for trivia later, but anyways.
Yep, I read some stuff about that. But yeah, they had a couple of octopus, and they like built a miniature set near the ocean, I think. Yeah, they literally just got a bunch of footage of this octopus on top of like a miniature set. And it's just interesting because it's like a really poorly lit scene. They have some kind of key light above that almost looks like it would look like moonlight. You get like this sort of this white glisten on like the wet octopus. But it's just like the slimiest kind of thing. Because it's just kind of like laying on the house, but it's, you know, as tentacles do, it's just kind of like rolling them around and stuff. And it looks so legit.
I remember
something I've never seen, you know?
That scene, I came upon that scene yesterday. I was watching it, and it was just like I got yanked back to the first time I saw it as a kid and just being like, having no idea what's going on. It's dark. It just like, and
giant octopus.
Whoa.
And it, you know, the way they shot it makes it look huge, you know? But it's probably not that big, you know?
Right. I hope not.
Yeah. Well, my mind immediately leapt to like, you know, like a giant Pacific octopus, like the giant red ones that are just huge.
Yeah.
But there's no way it was that, you know, it's just the way they shot it. Yeah. And it looks kind of like it's so dimly lit, like the octopus just kind of looks like almost black. It's like just this dark creature from the abyss.
Yeah, it's really
So
great. They did a really good job of that, like showing the wildness of the island and just that, like it's just like this is not just some normal place, and they set that up real quick, or they set that up in that way. You know what I mean? Without having to explore it too much. Like they didn't have to do a whole bunch of setup like they do. I'm just kind of thinking of the newer ones where they're like the newer movies with Skull Island in them, and how there's all kinds of crazy things that Kong fights or whatever. And like, I know this was not Skull Island, but they were trying to do a Skull Island kind of thing.
hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really cool, just like out of nowhere. They didn't have to make a special another kaiju for it. It just was like, let's have this giant thing cause some chaos for a second. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that scene. There's also some really good comping in that scene, where they're like combining like footage of all the villagers and stuff with like the octopus in the background. They did a really good job.
Yeah, and like King Kong's roar, I was just thinking about that too. The first time that he roars in that scene, because he starts like, I'm pretty sure he shows up because that woman is screaming about
Mm.
her son being trapped in the house with the octopus is destroying. And
Mm.
that first Kong roar, like I flinched the other day when I watched it. Like it's so it's like piercing. It's different than Godzilla's. It's like dark. It's deep and piercing at the same time, and it's just like quick. There's no wind up to it or nothing. It's just like there. The Godzilla roar kind of doesn't sneak up, but it takes a second to get going. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I I forgot to write this down, and so I'm going to say it before it leaves my mind that I think I made a comment in Godzilla Raids Again, maybe Rodan too, of just like they didn't do a great job of Foley work with the monsters and like movement and stuff, and there being noises associated with that. And I thought that they did really great with that in this movie. In fact,
Mm.
it was like something that I noticed during a fight scene. I was like, "Oh, hey, wait! There's actually like movement sounds from these dudes in the suits bouncing around and fighting each other and stuff. It's not just silence while they're moving."
Yeah. I kind of really like the reddish kind of color to Kong.
Yeah.
I think it was just mostly like when he first appeared, it's kind of like dimly lit, so he looks a little more reddish. And then like in the daylight, he just kind of looks kind of brown colored. It's almost like a sort of like a chimpanzee meets orangutan kind of hybrid. It's kind of like the look, I want to say. I mean, it's clearly like a guy in a suit. It doesn't look quite like an ape, but like some good design choices. The face is like lacking a little bit, I think, but yeah, I don't know. Every other Kong I've seen is just black, like gorilla vibes. So I kind of like that this was different than what I've seen before.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that it like, because this is I think I had this in trivia. This is the first Kong. This is the first movie to show either Kong or Godzilla in color.
Mm.
And so it's
Yeah,
interesting that
that makes
from
sense.
here on out, Kong is black, but his first color appearance, he was this reddish brown.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there another appearance of Kong in this franchise before 76?
No,
Probably
this
not.
is only the second. This is like the second Kong movie, King Kong movie. Period. The first one was the '30s one.
Yeah.
And
So
now
there's a
King Kong.
1976 King Kong movie that I
Right.
actually really like a lot. I don't know if you've seen it, but I like it because it's a very different plot than like the standard Kong plot. And also Jeff Bridges in it and some other people. It's kind of cool. You should check it out.
I have seen that. Yeah.
But Peter Jackson's King Kong, we've talked about this. You need to see that. It is excellent. I can't believe you haven't seen it.
I haven't finished it. I started it. I haven't finished it. I need to.
It's a long one, but it's epic. What we get to see Godzilla in the countryside in this movie. First time chronologically, I think. He's like stomping through the hills, through the grass, through the trees.
Yeah, no, not just like showing up in a city somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a train out there, and there's some cars and roads, and there's some of that kind of thing going on. Definitely some train shots. Some really great miniature train shots. Really impressive. Like, there was like a 180 pan and tilt kind of a shot where like it's basically like the camera's pointing down the length of the train and it's going by, and like the camera pans to follow down the other length of the train, if you will. The kind of one of those shots. But it was clearly a miniature, but like, I don't know, like the way they shot it, the scale felt right. Like it felt like the right scale, like almost you were looking at a real train. Like the only reason that it looked like a miniature to me is you could see like the window cutouts with like the fake silhouettes of people.
Yeah,
and like that's what stands out to me.
Yeah, and
like the scale looked perfect. Like I wouldn't have been able to tell that it wasn't a real train. It's just kind of going by fast. So, kind of goes to show like if you find a way to bring that sort of art style back in like modern times, like if you can get the math of like the camera focal length and the angle and like build a miniature and all of that, you could actually use like some small VFX to like do the windows, get some real people in the windows or something. Just replace that part and like the rest of it's gonna look normal.
Yep.
So yeah, man. I already mentioned the construction side. I thought that was cool. I just really liked it.
Yeah, there's I liked miniature work in general. They just keep getting better and better and better, and I think you're gonna continue to appreciate that as we go on because they keep getting better at miniatures. It's so cool.
Yeah, I like the screaming female in Kong's hand thing. The definite homage to the original.
Yeah,
you had to do it, and of course, like he climbed up on a building of sorts.
Fumiko.
Was that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you had to do it, right? It's like kind of the Kong thing. Well, that's the end of my list of like things that I liked. I'm curious, like, what are some things that you liked?
My thoughts. I was reading through some Letterboxd reviews. I really like this movie. We kind of were talking back and forth we were both watching it yesterday. You mentioned that earlier too, but just like this movie, you said it kind of felt classic, right?
I could tell I was watching a classic.
Yeah, and what was I gonna the thing that felt really classic to me about me was later on, like the fight scenes are so like if you want a snapshot of what the next few films we're gonna look at are gonna be like, it is those fight scenes and just kind of all the good parts about it and all the bad parts about it. It is what it is. I think what's really interesting about those fight scenes, as long as I'm talking about it, it's just like for this movie, this is the first time that all the fight scenes were choreographed by the dudes in the suits.
I did read that, yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of like were in charge of figuring out their own moves and everything, and I think that helped a little bit. But I think it also maybe hindered that they didn't have somebody else maybe I don't know if there was like a third person who also was allowed to like have input or whatever, or if if Ishiro Honda was just like, yeah, whatever, if you guys got it figured out, let's go for it,
I did have a feeling like watching some of the fight stuff, I was like, I feel like this is kind of what a bunch of them are going to be like going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually sets up the beginning of my thoughts here. When Godzilla raids again, I said, while Godzilla raids again drops hints, King Kong versus Godzilla fully reveals the Rock'em Sock'em Kaiju extravaganza for exactly what it will be and sets the tone for the next 10 years of Godzilla films. Its camp level is over 9,000. Like, everything is wrestling. Even the whole, like, they say it in the movie. Somebody says, like, "Baka, it's not a wrestling match," like, and then the dude from the pharmaceutical company is like in the background, just like, "That's it," like, and like comes walking in, and he's like, "That's it." And then next scene is Kong unconscious on a boat. Like, everything is wrestling, and it literally, yeah, I don't know. It just is. It's fun, and it also is pretty goofy. The next 10 years worth of films are going to be are goofy. This is the birth of the like goofy era of Godzilla. Um the other bit of stop motion, as long as we're talking about goofy Godzilla and fight scenes, the other bit of stop motion is in the very last fight scene when Godzilla like goes back on his tail to kick Kong in the chest. That's obviously stop motion because how's the dude in the suit gonna do that? Um, but yeah, there's this is the first instance of them giving Godzilla, like, trying to give Godzilla an emotion that is signifying like happy or pleasure, or I I know I'm doing something right or whatever. He does that, like he's like clicking his arms together, and you like hear, or he's trying to clap or something, and there's that, like, it's like his claws are clicking together. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that part?
I don't remember the sound. I have a note about the flapping,
Yeah. So there's like
the
that.
arm flapping.
That sound drives me nuts. There are other Godzilla celebrations that are coming up that I will be happy to be done with the Showa era. I'll say that right now. Yeah, this is their first attempt to try and give Godzilla some kind of positive emotions, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Which I guess I could have saved for my dislikes, but I don't structure my stuff like you, so that's fine. Um, what's in the show is in the show, right? You mentioned this earlier. They apparently didn't do. I said it already. They apparently didn't do enough blackface, so we've got more Japanese people in blackface, which is like somehow even weirder than like white people in blackface. Like, I don't. It's like even more unsettling to me for some reason. Um, the pharmaceutical director, totally an amplified version of the wacko from that made up country in Mothra. What did you just do?
I missed. Just chucked a soda bottle over my head. So if you're listening and you just heard that sound, that's what it was.
Yeah, great. So Fumiko being saved by Kong. Such a wacky plot point, and it is something about these movies that I think I've mentioned before, and it continues to drive me nuts up until they decide they like should probably start caring about the details. But it's one of these, like, so they're trying to figure out how are we going to save her, and then they're like, well, they like to the military guys, they're like, do you have any ether bombs? And they're like, yeah, well, what? And they're like, well, don't you have something we could use to like knock them out? And then the dude from the pharmaceutical company is like, wait, the red berries from the island, what's his face, extracted the sleeping blah 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 from it. It's what they used to put Kong to sleep. And they're like, oh yeah, we should totally do that. And he just turns to you guys like, hey, go get it. And then like next scene, uh next scene, they're firing these ether bombs out of tanks. Fire from the east, and they like over to the right, and then Kong slowly falls asleep, and they go and rescue Fumiko. Kong falls asleep because they somehow also all of a sudden have the drums from Faroe Island, and the dude starts like dum daga dum daga 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 dum daga dum daga dum, and then Kong starts having like acid trip fever dreams. Oh, I'm back on the island being lullabied to sleep. Let me come down off this building, which coincidentally that building he climbs is the National Diet building, or the National Dietary Committee building for Japan, basically the committee that gets to say how people should eat in Japan. Godzilla destroys that building in the 1954 movie, and so this is they've rebuilt it, and now Kong is scaling it with this tiny girl on her hand. Yeah, so they just, yeah, this dude's playing drums, digga 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 digga, and then eventually he falls asleep, and then they just stop, run and grab her, and then like next scene. And it's like, how many days has it been? Where, like, I don't know. It's just such a wild. It was a good idea, but it drives me nuts because there was like things just happen so quickly. There is no like. I guess I just don't like how there is no exploration of here's how we're gonna do it. Here's what it like. Here's maybe some actual kind of plausible science. We just didn't even think about that. It just is like, oh yeah, go these berries. The dude extracted that. Yeah, go get it. Hey, someone is missing. Let's go shoot at it. You know, like it's that all over again.
Mm.
I will say it was very interesting to see they did a lot of animation work on Kong's face for some close-ups throughout the movie. Those are I don't know if that was stop motion or whatever that was, but
Like animatronics, maybe.
kind of some really weird like
It looks
his
a little
eyes
laggy.
just look really weird. Godzilla's eyes still look weird. Just whatever. The atomic blast. I had thought about his atomic blast and how it like he can just like for a second and he just like whenever he wants to and then like Kong's all like, hey wait, I'm on fire. Like
and it looks like someone lit the suit on fire.
Yeah. Suit's on fire and the dude like pats himself and looks down and then just like and like turns around and walks and like that's the
and you're
end
like
of the
that's
scene.
the blooper. No.
Yeah, that should have been a blooper. Yeah, no, that's the end of the fight scene. Like
no, they were
Godzilla just
probably
let him
like,
walk
hey,
away. Like
I think that works actually. Let's put it in the movie. The guy inside's like freaking out.
He's like, wait, you,
he's going,
you shot me. Yeah, sea transport of King Kong. I found it very interesting that this was like, hey, we made some crazy ass raft and we're going to tow it behind this boat because there isn't a boat big enough. And if we fast forward to King Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus King Kong, the legendary one, like they knock Kong out and they put him on a boat and then they had that battle in the middle of the ocean, which is really sweet. And then the unbreakable string or whatever that dude made, they use it to after they put Kong to sleep and they decide they want to move him or whatever they're going to do with him, they use that string to tie it to balloons and a couple helicopters and just like lift him off the ground. I believe we've seen both of these things redone. We've seen the sea transport, but they also did air transport of Kong in Godzilla X Kong,
the newest one.
So it's just cool to see Legendary like doing their homework on old stuff and bringing it back. The what do I have written down here? Let's bury Godzilla? ? Will 1 million volts do the trick? ? Oh, and then oh my god, neither of these things worked. Like, what are we gonna do?
They tried some crazy stuff.
Let's dig a big hole and fill it with gasoline, and then we'll bury Godzilla in it. Like,
they were so surprised it didn't work. They were flabbergasted.
It's funny to me to watch these now that I'm not a kid and notice the things that are like the way that the military just go like these dudes from the pharmaceutical company show up and they're just like, yeah, well, we're here because of Kong. We're here representing Kong. And they're just like, oh yeah, sure. Why the F not? Like, come on in. Like, oh, yeah, sure. You can make the calls on how we're going to fight Godzilla. Yeah, come on. Like, be part of the plan. Cool. Like, that would so never happen. I think my favorite part of the movie that I really like has stuck with me since I was a kid, and I think I mentioned it in when we were talking about, I think it was Rodan. The spa building that they like tear down, that they like fight between, and they tear that building down. It's a giant spa. It looks like the house from Spirited.
Kind of the gothic one.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene where they just destroy that whole entire thing and then beat each other up. It's really great. It is. This movie is so terrible that it's really great, and that's why I like it.
You should have made that your review.
That's what I'll put in Letterboxd.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm gonna let you finish yawning. I'm gonna take a drink. I'm probably gonna edit this out.
I have some criticisms.
But lay some criticism.
Caleb, you don't edit anything out.
I don't edit anything. Yes, I do.
The number of times you say, it's great. Good times. Okay, some things that I didn't love. There were some tough quality moments, as previously mentioned. Most of them were in like the first quarter of the movie, I think.
Yeah, it's
first
like
quarter, first third. It was pretty good after that.
Mm-hmm.
There were like some tough.
So it's like the first reel things. Was damaged or something, or the beginning of the first reel was damaged.
Could be, maybe like the outside of the reel or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Outside in, maybe. There's like a gag where the pharmaceutical guy answers the phone but holds it upside down. And it's like, it's not working. And then he like turns it around. And I was like, why? What is this adding?
See, I've mentioned this before.
It's so stupid.
It's the anime feeling. They do this in anime too. It's got to be just like a Japanese thing. It's got to be that is Japanese humor, and they don't care what kind of movie it is if they can just if that kind of character exists in so many animes and so many Japanese films. They stick out all over the place. It's got to be.
It's very over the top, yeah.
Yeah, but even the dude in Shin Godzilla. No, not Shin Godzilla. Godzilla -1. The three dudes that are make up the crew of the boat that Shikishima is on. The taller dude or whatever that's whoa, he's super animated, and at the end of the movie when the kid shows up with all the tugboats and he just pops up onto the railing, he's just kid, do you remember? He's super animated and just he's an anime character, and that is, I don't know. I really want to. I want to get a hold of my friend Kyle, who I grew up with. You might know him. Do you know Kyle Von Lincoln?
I don't know him. No.
You know that name? He was homeschooled and ran in the whole very similar groups. Anyways, but he was older than me, so I guess that's not a surprise that you wouldn't know him. He's older than me. Yeah, he's way older than me. 3 years older.
He's your weeb contact.
But he, after he graduated high school, did a couple years of college, and then moved to Japan and married a girl and has a daughter and has lived there since 2006 or 2007 or something.
Oh wow. Knew what he wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I just feel like it's that is a culture, or I don't know, or that personality character type that's just somebody that shows up in Japanese entertainment, and they are very, very used to it. I'll get off my soapbox. I apologize.
I mean, that's what this podcast is a giant soapbox.
It's true.
Technically.
That's the point of podcasting. It's two white dudes. Soapbox.
Let's not rename the podcast to that. Dude, earlier in the film, all these submarine scenes were just tough, man. It's just real tough.
So tough.
Real bad. So many tough. Bad things. I don't think any of them have acted in their life. They're literally just reading lines with zero expression. I was like, wow, you are giving nothing.
I continue to really appreciate Toho's representation of America.
It varies too. This is just weird. Some of the characters in the sub were speaking English. Some of them were not speaking English, but were dubbed in English. What is that?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's so confusing to me.
The Japanese subtitles up in the top right.
Yeah, I appreciated that actually, seeing the vertical subtitles.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what did they get
What are we even doing?
Some guys from the West Coast and then some Russian dudes, and they're yeah, just say whatever and we're just gonna dub it. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super inconsistent. Yeah, I said a lot of actors, the sub stands out, but throughout the film, there's like definitely like some actors who are just kind of delivering their lines. They're not really like acting. It's kind of forced.
Literally just like line.
All right.
Line.
Sir, there is a thing on the thing that you should know about. Can I have lunch now? Like that's the vibe I was getting.
All hands. All hands
do I get paid
to
yet?
battle, emergency battle.
Very, very stiff.
Title.
Yeah, okay. I have here Godzilla squaring up and just bouncing around on a cliff.
Title.
Very nice. Literally, he's just like fisticuffs, hopping around. Literally, just hopping around on a cliff. Like a friggin' rabbit. What is happening? I was like, why? It was like a come at me, bro thing.
Hi.
He's just hopping around in place, like bring it on, but not in a cool way. Yeah, there's a lot of silly stuff in the fights. The thing that I hated the most was the arm flapping. Maybe there's a purpose to it. It made me realize I feel like I don't think I've seen his arms really move before this movie. And they decided just to go full send into like flapping his arms like a 3-year-old toddler, like a toddler in like a high chair wanting more food, just like flapping his arms around. Like a toddler,
like my daughter when she was 13 months old.
Like your daughter when she was 13 months old. Title. Just kidding. Yeah, a lot of the fight stuff was like, okay, well, they just kind of chucking boulders at each other. It's sick. Yeah, like it looks really good until like the boulder is clearly like blue screen. It's like, But they're landing hits. They must have just made a bunch of boulders out of foam and they're just chucking it at each other.
Sounds like a great time.
It sounds
like
hellish. I mean, in a costume like that. One of them was like, I read was like sewn in. It's a trivia item, but like imagine doing all that stuff sewn into a costume. Terrible. It sounds horrible.
Thank you for your service.
They're like, OSHA can suck it. Title.
What ocean?
Ha 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 ha. Another thing I really hated.
Episode? No, heck, hell, I'm not Chinese. I am the ocean. What ocean?
Anyways, you also mentioned like the beating of the drums at the end. He's just like the one main Japanese guy, and there's like a bunch of random island prop drums, and he's just like lightly hitting them with his hands, and then it's clearly like a timpani, and I'm like, this is just not how drums work. Is it? You gotta tell me if you feel this way watching movies. Do you struggle to like see the musical stuff just missed so hard?
Oh yeah, it's the worst.
And I'm like, is it just like, do you think a lot of people just miss that stuff or like don't care or notice?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like, is it actually just always that sloppy? Because it stands out so much.
Non-musicians don't care and don't notice.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's a middle ground too. Like at least make it seem like the thing you're hearing matches up visually with what you're seeing. Like fake it at least. Like it was not even close, man.
But he was making love.
This is not how it works.
He was and
it was
the
like,
sound was like freaking.
He was like dancing.
Who's that band that has all the mumbling at the start? And Slipknot. We got Slipknot drums, and this dude's playing them like bongos. Title.
I thought you were referencing Korn.
Oh yeah, it's definitely Korn. Damn it.
Oh.
We got Korn drums, and this dude's playing them like bongos. And I'll cut that together.
Yeah, just replace the
to make
joke.
me look smart. Ready? 3, 2, 1. We got Korn drums, and the dude's playing them like bongos. Title.
Couldn't even get it out. You gotta say something for the edit later, or you would not do it.
Oh, I'm not going to edit any of that. That'll roll straight through.
Peek behind the curtain.
Caleb will cut this part out.
Will he? Will he though? I don't have anything else in my things I didn't like list.
I get a real good
I tune out a little bit during the fighting.
Do some trivia.
Well, let's do some trivia.
Great.
You know what? I have a better one. Count me down again.
3, 2.
Well, speaking of segways, let's do some trivia.
Segways and scooters and Uber. Oh yeah. Trivia brought to you by.
I'm gonna downvote that song.
Trivia brought to you by Alaska.
Skagway, Alaska, where... No, I don't have anything. I just filtered 3 things though.
Thanks, Skagway, Alaska. Bok bok.
Bro, I never know what's gonna come out of your face. Title. Okay, I'm trying too hard. Trivia. Should we popcorn this?
Yeah, let's do it. You want to roll dice for who goes first?
No, I'm just gonna go first. What are we, 5?
4, 3,
2. This film, in theory, was one of the most highly attended Godzilla films in Japan. So,
what makes you say in theory?
Well, you read trivia and you're like, let's see those numbers, or let's see that like one of the highest attended.
I see. So they say that and they don't have receipts.
Yeah, I mean, they say it's it says here 13th most. This is hard to say. 13th most attended film. The 13th most attended film of all time in Japan, supposedly. Yeah, there's a lot of trivia for this movie. I can't remember if I mentioned earlier or not, but when I was kind of looking forward to getting to the end of the silly fighting because I wanted to read all the trivia, and I thought it'd be rude to read it while watching the film, so I waited. There's like a lot of stuff in here, so.
Is it my turn?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just like refreshing my memory on some of these. But I read them yesterday, I guess, when I finished the movie. So some cool stuff.
So let's see. I've got the original idea for the film was, there's this dude Willis O'Brien, and he's like one of the creators of the original King Kong film. Took the idea from Cooper, whatever that dude's name is. His last name is Cooper, who came up with the character. He had this idea that he was kind of like shopping around for King Kong versus Frankenstein, the Shelley monster.
Heard that.
And one of the people that he talked to was this guy, John Beck. And John Beck is the guy that ended up like doing the deal between Toho and Universal for the rights to King Kong, except for like he didn't have the rights to give King Kong to Toho, and like kind of promised it to Toho, was shopping around this idea. Toho bid on the idea from John Beck that he stole from this Willis O'Brien guy, and then John Beck had to go to Universal and be like, hey, Toho wants to do this. They had this idea, and like kind of got lucky with the fact that he didn't get totally screwed and it ever even happened, period. And the reason that Universal even had it and that he was kind of even able to get away with it is the guy, Marion C. Cooper. He's the guy that wrote King Kong, came up with the character originally.
Sounds familiar.
He licensed King Kong to RKO Pictures, and they're the ones that produced the first movie in 1933. And they were later bought by Universal Pictures. The dude Marion C. Cooper never like went to Universal and was like, hey, what's up with, you bought that studio, but what's up with Kong? He just assumed he still owned it. And then the announcement of King Kong Godzilla versus King Kong being made, like rumors started to go around This dude Cooper got word of it, went to Universal and was like, "Hey, what like that's my character." And they're like, "No, we own this. We have no." And like the dude could never come up with the paperwork to prove that he owned King Kong and
Well,
lost it to Universal. So,
dang,
yeah.
lost out on that one. Always patent your characters.
Always do the paperwork, Wazowski.
Patenting them. That's not the right word, but Godzilla's roar in this film is much higher pitched.
Mm-hmm.
According to this trivia item, that's kind of like a standard thing. It's a kind of higher pitch going forward.
Yep.
For the next while, which I guess you'd be able to speak to, but I guess they kind of like combined some of the 1954 sounds and then like sped it up a bit. That's kind of why it's pitched up. They kind of like use that going forward. You mentioned earlier, this is probably the first time King Kong, Godzilla were shot in color.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the first time in widescreen. So those are kind of exciting things.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot this this quote by Marion C. Cooper on the bit that I was talking about when he went and tried to sue Universal for the rights to King Kong. He goes, "I watched my brilliant stop motion creation turned into a bastardized rubber suited joke." And he lamented that it seems my hassle over King Kong is destined to be a protracted one. They'd make me sorry I ever invented the beast if I weren't so fond of him. It makes me feel like Macbeth. Bloody instructions, which being taught return to plague the inventor.
Wow, eloquent dude.
This is really terrible, and I wish I'd never made Kong ever because they've ruined him.
All right, agree to disagree, Cooper.
I agree to disagree as well.
This film made use of a shooting space that Toho had called Big Pool. It was originally built in 1960 for some water scenes for a movie about Pearl Harbor. This pool is 200 feet wide and at its deepest point also 200 feet deep. Just concrete. Yeah.
A lot.
I think they used it all the way up until like 2004. Mm-hmm. Just like a giant water tank for like water stuff. Oh yeah, I did notice. I noticed a bunch of really, really well done shots of like miniature boats in the sea with like the whole transporting Kong footage. Noticed a bunch of stuff in there, and it stood out to me because the water kind of looked slow motion, or it looked like the water was like the splashes of the water were like too big. And I was like, oh man, like they're cutting between like a miniature of a boat. So cool, man. Yeah. Whole thing.
So much art, so much combination of like miniatures and then like the stuff that had to be real life size. And yeah. I got a couple more here. The actress that played Fumiko, Mei Hama, she would later on be in 1967's James Bond, You Only Live Twice, as like the Bond role of the film. But this was her first role in a movie. Yeah. And was that kind of like the damsel in distress callback to the first movie? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. Here's the octopus item. Official name of the giant octopus that Kong fights is Udako. There were 4 live octopuses used in that fight sequence, as well as a stop motion model. They used hot air. They blew hot air on the octopi to get them to move.
Oh, really?
There's like a legend, who knows if it's true, that after they finished shooting it, that all but one were released, and then they ate one of them. It's different over there, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also, this isn't a trivia item, but I feel like I need to point out that our friend, that one actor, is also in this film in yet another role.
Oh yeah, the dude that He's like in every Godzilla
So far,
movie.
he's been in every movie in a different role.
What's that guy's name?
I can't think of his name. But he played the scientist in the original one.
Kenji Sahara? Yeah, it's that guy, Kenji.
Oh, this is the 1000th movie in the Criterion Collection. It's kind of cool.
That's trivia right there.
That is so cool. Why is your hand up?
I don't know, my arm hurt. I needed to do a little.
Oh, okay.
Just got a little stretch. Okay, so this one, I have two more. One of them is its own thing, and the other one is a separate thing. So the first one is there was a myth that there were two different endings for the movie.
Read about that.
But like based on where it was shown, that the Japanese version showed like King Kong being the winner and like declaring King Kong the winner, and then the American version like declared Godzilla was still alive or something afterwards. And this was apparently completely made up and like did not exist at all. And the ending in the 62 version is the ending of the 63 version. But there was some kind of like rumor myth thing for a while that like even a couple like celebrities in America like propagated apparently about it. Like they showed two different endings to it depending on where you watched it. I have a link to that somewhere. Even another one, or do you want me to finish up?
I have the last one I have is just other than like box office, which we could touch on. Like probably the first and only non-blonde woman to be stolen by King Kong. Like kind of like the trope is like it's a
we didn't
blonde
talk about,
white woman.
We didn't talk about when they go like try to rescue her from him. The really terrible blue screened giant like but miniature arm of Kong that was supposed to be his hand. It looks so bad.
Yeah.
And like when
it
he's supposedly falling
1933.
asleep and she's like slipping out of his hand, or he's falling asleep and she's like slipping out of his hand, it's totally just a little doll that they like stuffed in a little like into the dude in the suit's hand. He just had a little doll in his hand and they like filmed that for a second. I just thought that was really, it's another one of those like, I don't know if I would have noticed except for like you said with the train, like I wouldn't have noticed that was a miniature or something weird, except for like the people were fake, and it was the same deal. Like that shot was kind of okay, except for it was just clearly like a terrible little doll with some fake hair and everything that there's just slipping out of the dude's hand. My last piece of trivia is something that I thought was really cool from the legendary MonsterVerse, and I think we addressed this at the time that we talked about the movies. In Kong Skull Island, or whatever the first one is, the first legendary Kong movie, they like he is a certain height, and then by the time he fights Godzilla, he's bigger. And they talk about, well, he was really young when we found him the first time. He's obviously continued to grow. He's older, blah, blah, blah. And it's talked about again in Godzilla X Kong as well. But for this movie, they just straight up just changed Kong and didn't address it at all. In the 1933 movie, he's only 20 feet tall. And Godzilla in 1954, all the way up until 1975 or something, is 164 feet tall. And they were like, we can't really have a 20-foot tall monkey fight 164-foot tall Godzilla. So I just thought I think that is a really prime example. This literally just crossed my mind of the thing that I was talking about earlier about how they, at the time, did not put any thought into, like there was no thought into little tiny, I guess, like canon details or lore details that make everything make sense and fill in the plot for you and make it feel, I guess, more realistic. All the science things that they just blatantly ignore. Well, the dude he found a way to extract it, and now we've got it in these bombs ready to go. Mad, like they stopped doing that eventually, but it's something that has always stood out to me, and as I've gotten older and watched these, it's just like it is often what makes the movies kind of like, I don't want to, like, it takes me out of the film, especially these older ones. It's just like, there's just so little detail there. It just jumps to these, like, especially when we get into things with like the movie with Jet Jaguar. Like Jet Jaguar just does these things, and they're just like, he just does it. It's like, no, you have to program a robot to do that, and like, not how that works. So it's just, I appreciate that it was fixed, and it's funny to see like just that was not in their minds at all ever, initially.
Nice.
So yeah,
it was a box office success.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's fun. It's a monster movie. It's, yeah.
Re-released a few times. Definitely did well. Rating?
I forgot to write this down, but it just crossed my mind again. Toho they wanted to do a rematch in the 90s for the 60th anniversary, because this was the 30th anniversary, and Universal Pictures wanted too much money. They wanted like double the budget of what Toho had set aside for the film, just for the rights to King Kong.
Wow.
And so they were like, no, we don't want to do
that. All right, what's the final rating?
Out of 5 or 10 stars?
Let's do 5.
Out of 5, I give this a 4. 4
Okay.
stars.
3.5 for me.
Yeah. I think I would land at 3.5 if it didn't have that nostalgia feel for me. Oh, and I promised to save this for the show, so let's wrap up with this. This movie has such a nostalgia feel for me because of, I don't know why it's cemented in my brain, of like the first time I saw it, my family had been, it had to have been a Friday or Saturday or something. We'd gone out for school shopping, back to school shopping, clothes, whatever, gotten dinner, and my parents we had carpet in the living room still at the time, and they had the carpet cleaned that day while we were gone. And so like came home and it was still like kind of like, wet, like drying, whatever. And so we like had to take our shoes off, obviously, and like to get into the living room, my dad had like he like basically like reached in and like yanked the couch to the edge of the door so that we could just like not have to step on the carpet at all, and just like threw us onto the couch so that we could be in the living room, and then like turn on the TV, and this was on, and he was just like, oh yeah, no, here it is, this is what we're watching. Boom. And it was like just starting, and so it was like dark, I was exhausted, I just remember having to like stay on the couch and like having to like weird monkey crawl out of the living room when it was over. And yeah, so core memory.
Pun intended.
Unlocked. There was a pun there.
Crawling out of the living room like a monkey.
Oh, title.
Technically, he's an ape, not a monkey. But anyways.
That never stopped us before.